respond to what Bob Menendez, obviously the top Democrat, actually current chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, said about this action. He said that this action vindicates the brutal behavior of the Cuban government. Trading Mr. Gross for 3 convicted criminals sets an extremely dangerous precedent. It invites dictatorial and rogue regimes to use Americans serving overseas as bargaining chips. And he says that this will put thousands of Americans serving overseas in increased danger for that very reason. What's your response to Senator Menendez?
Well, here at the White House, we obviously have tremendous respect for Senator Menendez. He is the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, and we have worked with him to implement the sanctions regime on Russia that has been useful in advancing our national security interests. We've done the same thing with Iran. So we have succeeded in working with Senator Menendez, Chairman Menendez, on a range of issues. But in this situation, we fundamentally disagree, and there's no soft pedaling that. And there's one factual disagreement that should be pointed out here. Mr. Gross was released on humanitarian grounds. For years, the Cuban regime has suggested that Mr. Gross could be released in exchange for the release of Cuban prisoners. And that is a proposal that was summarily rejected by this administration. If we were open to that, that is an agreement that we would have agreed to years ago. So the fact of the matter is Mr. Gross was released on humanitarian grounds at the request of this administration, and the spy swap that was executed between the United States and Cuba did secure the release of this intelligence asset that is now on American soil.
Josh, you are not going to stand there and say that Alan Gross's release had nothing to do with the release at the same time of the 3 convicted Cuban spies.
What I'm telling you is that Alan Gross's release on humanitarian grounds is something that this administration insisted upon. And once that agreement was reached, it opened the door for additional negotiations and additional agreements to be reached. So by removing the impediment of Mr. Gross's unjust detention, we could engage in a conversation with the Cubans about the spy swap. And that's exactly what happened.
So it's a coincidence that they were all released at the same time?
John, it's not a coincidence. What exactly happened?
This is all part of the same deal. How can you say that Alan Gross is released, 3 spies released. I understand you also have a Cuban who was working with U.S. intelligence who was released at the same time as part of the same package. But you can't say that the Alan Gross release is unrelated to the release of these 3 convicted Cuban spies.
Yes, I can,
really?
And I just did. That is very simple, John. The reason for that is very simple. The agreement on a spy swap would not have been reached and was not reached without the standalone agreement to release Mr. Gross on humanitarian grounds.
Isn't this all today? Am I missing something where the...
Yeah, but as I think, as you know, these conversations between the United States and Cuba were underway for more than a year between senior officials here in this administration and senior Cuban officials. And all along, the fundamental impediment to our ability to implement the kinds of changes that we would like to see has been the unjust detention of Mr. Gross. And once the Cubans agreed to release him on humanitarian grounds, then we could have a conversation about some of the other agreements that were reached. And the other agreement that was reached was this specific spy swap between the 3 Cubans that were held in Florida and the highly valued intelligence asset that has been held in Cuba for almost 20 years, but is now on American soil.
Okay, just one